Hello everybody, my name is Jackie and welcome to Prairie Sports Talk, the podcast where we talk about sports that directly impact the Canadian Prairie. Today is August 8th, 2024, and we don't exactly have a lot to talk about today, but what we do have to talk about, I think, are some very interesting topics. So we're going to start by talking about the weird week that was in the CFL and how that's going to impact the upcoming week, which I think has the potential to be just as weird, if not maybe even more so. And then we're also going to talk about the WCBL. The Swift Current 57 season has now ended, and I want to talk a little bit about how the 57s did this season and what the playoffs will look like for the WCBL. But let's just get into it. Oh man, it was such a weird week in the CFL. Right from the get-go, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which have been struggling all season long, came out and just embarrassed the BC Lions from start to finish. The Lions have been having a tremendous season so far, but the Bombers, they just made the Lions look like, well, the matchup we've seen the last couple of years. The Lions, yes, they had moments where they looked like they could have got back on track, but Caleris and the Bombers offense just shut down BC's defense all game long. BC's defense just couldn't keep up, and this is a Lions defense that, in my opinion, has been very, very sharp all season long. And Jefferson and the defense, they looked like the defense we have seen in previous seasons from Winnipeg. But with that said, I'm not overly sure Winnipeg can keep it going, because any team can just have a couple surprise wins. Yes, they're on a little bit of a hot streak, but at the end of the day, this is a long football season. It's 18 games. At the end of the day, 3 wins, yes, even if they come in a short month or so, that might not matter down the stretch, especially if they continue to play like they were as recently as their game against Saskatchewan. Because that looked like the Bombers team that we have seen all season long. But the team we saw against BC is the Bombers team we have come to expect from previous years. Now, every week for the rest of the season, you're going to sit down and you're going to be wondering, what Bombers team are we going to see tonight? And I think the answer for a lot of those games will be we will see the team that has struggled this season. Meanwhile, for BC, they had a really rough game. All game long, they got outworked, outplayed, outmatched by the Bombers. And to capitalize, just to put a period at the end, VA went down. And Dolegala came into the game and he did not look like the Dolegala we saw last season. The whole point of bringing him in for BC was to try and make him into a star down the road once VA retires. Not for him to come in and just be thrown to the fire like he was in Saskatchewan last season. Yes, in Saskatchewan, he did a solid job considering the circumstances he was in. But at the end of the day, I'm not quite sure if he has the veteran experience to lead a team like BC at this point. I feel like without VA, the Lions are going to really struggle. I hope VA comes back very soon though, because I still think a healthy Lions team is probably the best CFL team in the league right now. And then we move on to a very, very straightforward game. Montreal embarrasses Hamilton. I mean, we all saw this coming. 33-16, it was a little closer than it should have been. But I mean, Montreal played decent. They played as well as they needed to win. They definitely could have played better. But I mean, you can't expect a team to go out and play perfect every game. Especially not against a team that might have been feeling a little more confident like Hamilton was coming off their first win. But the major story in this game, Caleb Evans, the backup quarterback for Montreal, is out for the season. Evans hurt his leg and he's just done. He's not going to return for the rest of the season. We won't see him again till next year at the earliest. So they went out, they signed, I believe, Dominic Davis. I mean, at the end of the day, that's basically just to fill a roster spot. Yes, Cody Fajardo is likely coming back very soon, but the fact that they have lost their short yardage quarterback is definitely going to be an issue for the Alouettes. I still think they probably have the best team in the East, but this is not great for the Alouettes because Evans, though he really has struggled in the time he has been the man in Montreal, so to say, like when he has had snaps not on short yardage, he has really struggled. But on short yardage, he's been basically a machine all season long. So Montreal losing him, that's going to be a major issue. I think Davis will be able to come in and he'll be able to be a respectable replacement. Not sure if he'll be as consistent as Evans has been, but he'll be better than nothing, I guess. And then we move on to a game I got significantly wrong. I thought the Riders would still beat the Elks this past week. I felt like even with Trey Ford in the game, the Riders would still be able to beat them. But I think the Riders very much fell into a trap game philosophy here because up to this point, they hadn't lost at home all season long, and they've had a very, very good year so far. Yes, they had lost the game before this, but I mean, like I said before, you're not going to be perfect every game. But the Elks really just made a statement against the Riders. The Elks showed that they still potentially have a solid team. But that team needs Trey Ford to operate. But when Trey Ford is in the game, man, does he operate. Trey Ford went 18 for 22 for 252 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. Nothing that really jumps off the stat sheet, but everything he did was done very well all game long. Ford is the future of the Canadian Football League, and he has just taken his first victim. I don't think it's that big of a shock that the Elks win as soon as they put Ford in. The only shock from this is that the team they beat was the Rough Riders. And then we move on to the Argos and the Stampeders. This was the Argos game to lose right from the get-go. And then the fourth quarter started. In the fourth quarter, the Argos gave up 21 points. Jake Mayer turned it on in the fourth for Calgary. Jake Mayer's final stats were very, very solid to say the least. He went 26 for 37 for 287 and 2 touchdowns and a pick, both touchdowns coming in the fourth quarter. Mayer looked very sharp. Calgary's running game continues to struggle, and despite reports saying that they have signed Jamal Moore, he still hasn't played a game for them, which is very interesting to me. I'm not sure why that is. I poked around on the internet seeing what I could find, but I couldn't find anything about him more recent than saying Calgary had signed him a few weeks ago. I think it's very notable that Moore hasn't played. I can't help but wonder if maybe there's still a lingering injury from last season. I don't know, it's hard to say. But I think the most notable part about this game, Toronto's inability to finish. They had Calgary on the ropes headed into the fourth. And what happened? Their defense disappeared. Their offense couldn't do anything to save their lives in the fourth. Calgary just could not, Toronto just could not keep up with Calgary in the fourth. When, for the rest of the game, it was the other way around. I don't know if this is a lack of experience from Cameron Dukes or what's going on, but at the end of the day, this is something very, very interesting for Calgary because this gives them something to build off of as the season continues. I can't help but wonder what the rematch is going to look like this week. On to my predictions for week 10. And we open up with my game of the week. We have Saskatchewan visiting Ottawa. These are two teams that came off a very rough season last year, but now are near the top of their divisions. And I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think Ottawa wins. Plain and simple. I feel like with Harris not quite being back yet, Olet still being injured, Thurman now being added to the injury list, the injuries are piling up for Saskatchewan. There's a very good chance most of the players on the injury report are going to be back next week. But this week, I feel like it's just going to be too much for the Riders. And though I think this is going to be a very tight game and it's going to go right down to the wire, I think Ottawa wins. But I want to point out one very interesting story heading into this game. Pimperton and Ajo have been the two standout receivers in the league, and they're going to be on opposite sides heading into this game. I'm very interested to see what these two breakout receivers can do this week. I'm expecting big things from both of them. I would not be shocked if they both end up getting a touchdown. Ajo had a questionable one taken away from him last week, so I feel like he's going to come out and he's going to be hungry to get one this week to make up for not getting it last week. And I feel like just with how good Pimperton's been through his first 3 games in the CFL, he's just going to get hungrier and hungrier, and he's going to want to get more and more yards. I'm very excited to watch this matchup. I mean, I don't have much more to say about that matchup. I'm just very interested in it. I think tonight's game is going to be very fun to watch. And then we move on to the rematch I mentioned earlier. We have Calgary headed to Toronto. And oh boy, this is going to be an interesting game. Because as I mentioned before, Calgary had a dramatic fourth quarter comeback against the Argos last week. And I think one of two things will happen. I think either Calgary carries over the momentum from last week and just runs through the Argos this week, or the Argos are upset and they want revenge this week and they run through the Stampeders. I think this game could go either way, but whichever way it does end up going, I feel like the game's going to be a blowout. I feel like this game's not even going to be close. I'm very curious to see how it ends up playing out though. And then we move on to the second of two rematches from last week. We have Hamilton headed to Montreal. I mean, I don't think this is going to be any different than last week. I feel like the biggest difference will be Montreal's probably going to win by more. I don't have much more to say about this game than that. I mean, you got arguably the best team in the East against arguably the worst. What more is there to say? And then you move on to BC and Edmonton. BC is going to struggle without VA this week. This is going to be a very controversial pick, but I think Trayford and the Elks win this game. I feel like without VA, the Lions aren't going to be able to do much on offense. I don't care how good their defense is. I feel like the Elks with Trayford as their quarterback, I feel like they're going to easily beat a VA-less Lions team. I think this is going to be a very interesting game to watch as well. And this is probably the pick I'm least confident in, but it's still the pick I am making. I think Trayford and the Elks beat Jake Dolegala and the Lions. And lastly, let's end off with the WCBL. The Swift Current 57s have missed the playoffs for the first time since the 90s. It sucks. It really does. The Swift Current 57s has been a point of pride for sports fans in Swift Current just as long as I can remember, because this team has just been able to contend season after season after season. They've won championships. They've toppled giants. But this season, it was our turn to be toppled. You can't have a team that is successful year after year after year without eventually running into a wall. And the 57s hit that wall this season. There's not much more to say about it. But I think there will definitely some positives. Now I'm going to expand on both these positives in my end of season Swift Current 57s special, which should be coming out by the end of August. But to give you a little teaser, Demetrio Ultraletta and Vody Alexander both had tremendous seasons. They were a threat to go deep every single time they came up to the plate. They consistently got on base. They saw what was in the strike zone and what wasn't. These two looked amazing all season long. But the biggest positive for the 57s? Kenny Jinks has gone professional. But before we talk about that, you guys are going to have to wait until my end of season special. But that is everything I have for you guys this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you're on Spotify, be sure to follow the 13th Man Podcast Network. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you guys have a great night. I hope you guys have a great whatever. Stay safe, stay strong. You got this. And this is Jackie for Prairie Sports Talk signing off.